You're listening to the Fit Mind, Fit Body podcast, where we explore the connection between a fit body and positive mental health. And our big mission? It's to help 10,000 runners to develop fitter minds in the next 2 years. I'm your host, Michelle Frost. Let's get moving. Welcome to this episode of the Fit Mind, Fit Body podcast. Today, we speak to Alwyn McMahon, and she wants us to know that you are never too old to start running. Enjoy. Today on Fit Mind, Fit Body, I am delighted to share with you a friend of mine, Alwyn McMahon. Welcome, Alwyn. How are you?
Oh, hi. I'm well, thanks.
Thank you for being so brave to come on the Fit Mind, Fit Body podcast. For some people, it's quite a challenging thing. Although I think I was really happy when you said that you would do it, knowing that technology isn't necessarily the thing that you love to play with all the time, and you only use it when you need to. So I really appreciate you jumping onto this technology and coming to have a chat with us. So
yeah,
thanks.
Thank you. I will admit I was a little bit nervous about the technology more than the actual interview.
Isn't that funny? And here you are, and it all worked out, and we didn't have any problems. Probably actually it was my problem more than yours, in that I was
once I got the mute button off, it worked a lot better.
Yeah, that usually works. All right, let's start with, where did you grow up, Alwyn? Let us talk about your background.
I actually grew up in 2 states.
Oh, wow.
So my father was a civil engineer.
Yeah.
And moved around a bit with work, basically wherever railways needed building.
Yeah.
And so I was born in Hobart, and then I lived the first 6.5 years of my life in Launceston.
Yeah.
Started school at Riverside Primary.
Yeah.
Then we went to WA to see extended family for the Christmas holidays. While we were there, Dad got a new job.
What?
So we packed up and moved to Perth, WA.
So you went there for Christmas and stayed there for longer.
We went for Christmas and stayed there for longer. And when they did the move, Mum, Dad and my 2 brothers came back to Tassie to pack up. And because my aunties and Mum were worried about me missing the first 5 weeks of grade 2, I stayed in WA for my auntie.
Yeah.
While they did the move.
Wow. And you can remember that? Can you remember back to that?
Oh, yeah, I can remember staying with my auntie because I had, she had 3 girls. And so Kath, my cousin, she was only 11 months older than us. So there was the 3 of us all in one room.
Oh, fantastic.
And we went to school together. And then I remember when Mum and Dad came back, all I wanted to do was be with them again.
Oh, I want to give them a big hug. It's a long time when you're so young, isn't it? Yeah. Oh.
And Mum did admit later she had a change of clothes for me in case I changed my mind at the station.
Oh, no. Oh, isn't that crazy? Oh, and then how long did you stay in
And so then basically we were in Perth, it must have been about 10 years.
That's a lot of your schooling, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it was all my primary schooling, and I was in what's now called Year 11.
Wow.
So I moved back to Tassie with family in the first week of second term in Year 11.
How was that?
And that, once again, that was a job transfer with Dad.
Yeah.
And there was a little bit of debate as to whether I should be in grade 10 at Riverside High or whether I should be in first year matric, which is now LC, because I had only just turned 16.
The different school systems, isn't it?
And different school system between states. So I had finished the equivalent of grade 10 in WA, but because of my age and the different ways schools operate, because in WA you do 7 years primary school.
Oh, okay. Wow.
And then 5 years at the second school. So I just finished third year, but that was equivalent to fourth year over here. So third year being grade 10. And so the headmaster at Riverside wanted me to go there.
Yeah.
And the headmaster at Matric said, oh, no, I reckon you should be here. So Mum and Dad said, well, we'll start you at Matric, because if you can't cope, it's easier to drop back.
Yeah.
Anyway, I survived.
You did. You went okay.
And
so how was that for friends and things like that? Can you remember? Because although this is where you were, originated from, it's a long time in that, when you're young, to be away.
All the people I started with at Riverside Primary in grade 1, most of them, none of them I'd kept contact. The only ones we'd kept contact with, sort of like, it was more the parents rather than us kids, because I was only like 6 when we left there. But the families, we lived in Fairway Crescent, the families that were our neighbours, Mum and Dad had kept in contact with a couple of those families.
Yeah.
But we didn't have any close contact when I came back. But all the kids I started grade 1 with at Riverside Primary, they were in grade 10 at Riverside High.
So they weren't in year 11 with
basically, I ended up a year ahead of them all. And it wasn't as hard for me, probably, because I'd been, primary school, I was in the public system. Then I went to a private school for first, second and third year, and I hated it. It just didn't suit me at all.
No.
And then I was able to come back to the public system at the beginning of fourth year.
Yeah.
And so I'd only been at Applecross High for 1 term.
Okay.
And we moved, and I'd made friends that I knew from outside of school quite easily there.
Yeah.
And then when we came back here, I didn't know a single soul. But a couple of girls took me under their wing, and up until, we started going our separate ways and having kids at different times and things, we stayed in close contact.
Wow.
We've sort of, our lives have taken different pathways now, and we haven't seen each other for ages, but
that's
I do
nice.
keep thinking I need to make contact at one stage.
That's lovely that you had, some people who did that, and it sort of helped that transition, which can often be really tricky, going when you're, especially as self-conscious teenagers, all teenagers tend to have a touch of self-consciousness about them. And then going to an environment where don't know anyone, it can be quite a challenging time. So.
I think one of the challenges too with the move in year 11, especially going to a school like Matric, where even then it was a big school.
Yeah.
And because you did have home group, but apart from home group, you weren't with the same group of kids.
Yeah.
For every class, you just sort of were mixed. You were in different classes all the time, and as it turned out, I was doing maths, science, and my friends at Matric were more doing the humanities.
Yeah.
So we didn't share any classes or home groups together at all.
Wow.
But for somebody coming in new, when you just go to one class, you tend to go to your class, move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
But fortunately, they found me looking a bit forlorn and, at a loose end down in the locker room, and adopted me into their group there.
That's lovely. Okay, let's go back to West Australia for a short time. What kind of sporting stuff did you do when you were at school? Were you very sporty?
I was not very sporty at all at school. Believe it or not, I was skinny, underweight, and completely gangly and uncoordinated.
Wow.
And in the days I went to school, for girls anyway, most school sport revolved around ball sports.
Okay. So
like basketball, netball, softball.
Any tennis? No.
I did play tennis. Yeah. And so my ball catching skills are still non-existent. But outside of school, I did play tennis.
Yeah.
And when we first came to Tassie, I did actually play B Reserve at Riverside Tennis Club for a few weeks, but then I also joined Riverside Swimming Club, and then there became a clash of interests and swimming won.
That's interesting. So obviously the swimming is something that you've brought through from that time. Like it's not.
Yeah, I didn't swim formally with the club until we came back to Tassie, and I joined Riverside just to meet people in the area at 16. So as far as swimming went, I was a late starter.
Yeah.
And so I was never
at 16, you're saying?
Yeah, I was never competitive at state level or anything like that, but I was the reasonable club swimmer. But Mum was a bit of a water baby. I was always a water baby.
Yeah.
You know, Dad and Mum used to say how we would be down at Penguin when I was like 2. The water was so freezing, Dad couldn't even stand in it, and I was there tipping buckets of water over my head.
Oh.
And Dad was a yachty. So we spent from when I was 7 onwards, we spent a lot of time hanging around the yacht club.
Yeah.
I sailed Pelicans, which is like the junior training boat, bigger than a Sabo.
Yeah.
And I crewed with another girl for a few years.
Wow.
But then when I turned 15, my age meant that I couldn't sail in a Pelican anymore. But I was too light to move. I think I was 6 stone at that stage. So then I was too light to crew in a Cherub. And so that was the end of my sailing days.
Oh,
I do like it. And so while my brother and Dad was out sailing, I used to spend the time just swimming off the jetties at the yacht club.
Okay. So that's...
And then Dad had bought my brother and I a boat, which basically my brother took over. But in the odd times that we went out together, if we capsized, he was the skipper, I was the crew. So I was the one that had to hang in the water while he bailed out. Yeah. So I think it just continued the love of swimming.
Just being in the water.
Yeah, and living in Perth. Yeah. If it was a hot day, Dad would come home from work and he'd take us down the surf beach, and we'd splash around there for an hour or so. All our Christmas holidays were down at Rockingham at sailing regattas. Yeah. So Dads would sail, mums and kids would be on the beach. Yeah. Swimming, building sandcastles, getting sunburnt.
Having what would appear to be a typical Australian childhood, doesn't it? That kind of beach, in summer. That seems quite typical, doesn't it?
Typical 60s childhood, where there wasn't as much organised stuff as now. But we were, by the time that Mum knew we could swim, when we were about 11, we'd walk down the beach, not the surf beach, but the river beach. Yeah. And we'd just go swimming by ourselves, turn around, come home, walk back. And then when the high school opened the pool, then we'd walk up the hill and go up to the high school pool instead. Learned to swim in the river. Yeah, in Western Australia? In Western Australia, at a place called Deepwater Point, which is in the Canning River, south of Perth. And like these days, they'd never ever allow it, but there'd be probably 15, 20 in the class. Yeah. And your intermediate and senior certificate had longer swims in it. And so to mark the 50 metres, they just had like a platform 50 metres away from the end of the jetty. And the teacher would just say, okay, out to the platform, freestyle, have a rest, come back, breaststroke. Wow. And then depending on what certificate was, you'd do however many laps. And there'd be no support crew, no teacher on the raft or anything. There'd be one teacher watching you from the jetty. And depending on which way the wind was blowing, you'll just be swimming through jellyfish soup all the way.
Even myself growing up on King Island, I remember doing swimming, the one where you had to rescue people. So we had to go to school with spare clothes and jump in the water and take it in turns to be rescued by someone else. But we did all that off the jetty in Curry, and the water was freezing and there was only one teacher there and there was probably, 20 of us or whatever. It's sort of all, and it just seems like chaos now if you think about it.
Well, these days you wouldn't be allowed somebody to get sued or a jellyfish sting.
Yeah, we didn't have the jellyfish, but we certainly had cold water, and the jetty's quite high up there from the water, so it was quite a jump in too, which was always a bit of fun.
I don't remember this being overly high, but it possibly was.
And it was more, that's probably more fun for the kids, I think, sometimes.
We used to go down. Mum used to take us down after school before we were old enough to go down by ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's what we do. We just jump or dive off the jetty and swim back to the ladder, repeat.
Yeah. It's like round and round. It's amazing what it takes to amuse children.
Not much.
That's right. A bit of water and a jetty and off you go. There's a day's worth of enjoyment.
Yeah, that's about it. Yeah, so really growing up it was swimming.
Very swimming.
But swimming, but not organised swimming.
Yeah.
Going down the yacht club. Family trips out on the boat that Dad sailed on. Yeah. Racing in the junior craft for a few years. Had at school I just played whatever was on. Whatever they were doing in phys ed at the time. So that was a mix of a bit of gymnastics, a bit of hockey, a bit of and netball. Yeah. Whatever the PE lesson threw at you.
Yeah, which is always a bit fun. So you're back in Tassie, you're at matric, and you said you were doing a bit of tennis perhaps then. Did you do much swimming then?
Yeah, what happened, I joined both the tennis club and the swimming club. And I was playing in the Saturday B reserve, but then the swimming club said, there's a interclub meeting at Burnie this Saturday, and then tennis and swimming were clashing. Yeah. So I couldn't keep up the commitment to a team sport, so that's when I started swimming a bit more seriously.
Yeah. All right.
And if I turned up to all the training sessions, I could be swimming up to 9 times a week.
Oh wow. That's
because we used to do
big commitment.
Swim morning and after school, but there were a lot of mornings I didn't get there because I had to walk 1.5 km to the pool, swim, then walk home, then get ready for school. So it was nothing to be eating 6 pieces of toast for breakfast on the way down to the bus stop, and then get to school by 9 o'clock. Yeah. So sometimes I was just too tired to be bothered getting out of bed.
Yeah, totally. So you finish matric. What did you do next? What was your life path after school?
I applied for lots of jobs, and I applied for a couple of studentships and cadetships, and I got a job at the Commonwealth, offered a job at Commonwealth Bank and one at Mount Pleasant. So I took the job at Mount Pleasant.
Sciencey.
I was there for 2 weeks, and then I got offered a teaching studentship. Yeah. And I was going to turn the teaching studentship down and stay at Mount Pleasant, and the girls that were with me said, this is a boring dead-end job. It was in the lab, but it was just setting up mundane test tube things, and you'll be bored out of your brain in 4 weeks' time. You'd be stupid not to take the studentship. So I did. Wow. And then got to the long prac in 3rd year. Found teaching just was not for me at all. I'm not got the person skills to manage 25 9-year-olds.
Annoying children. Anyway.
And I found, especially with social studies, really hard because all my history was Western Australian history. Yeah. So as far as Tasmanian history, I was having to really, really study up the night before to be able to try and teach it the next day. So it was a bit hard. And some of the other subjects that I had no interest in, I found very hard, trying to get 25 people interested in it when I had no interest in it either. And fortunately, my supervisor agreed that teaching really wasn't my fit. So they terminated my bond. Then I was on the dole for 3 months and applied for 40 jobs in that time. Wow. to be told I was either too old, too young, too inexperienced, overqualified.
So this was when you were like 17, 18?
20.
20?
Yeah. Or and I did get an interview with the PWD down in Hobart.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole way the interview went was, oh, we've had girls here before and they never work out. They spend all their time gossiping. And at the end of the interview...
What year was this, Alwyn?
Would have been about 75.
Okay. Yeah, because we just think about, the era, we were talking before about what you can get away with and things. It's like, it's so interesting how different things are.
And anyway, my reply to that was, well, I think I would manage. I've grown up with 3 brothers. And then it was, well, the trays of metal that you have to rock, because it was in analysing the rock and that for roadworks.
Yeah.
And they said, well, you wouldn't be able to lift the concrete things and you wouldn't be able to lift that. It's all too heavy for a girl and you'll get your dress dirty. And, a little dear. That I'd only put the dress on for the interview and my jeans were in the car. And the minute I got back to the car, I changed anyway. And I said, well, when we finish talking, can you take me for a tour of the lab, please? And just see if I can lift the things.
Yeah.
And he begrudgingly said, oh, okay. And anyway, we went for a tour of the lab and some of the guys that were working there had a look at me and I just said, oh, hi, I've just come to see what work you do and how heavy your things are. Can I try and lift one of them, please? And he said, oh, yeah. And I lifted it. It was a little bit of a struggle, but I wasn't going to let that interview guy see that.
See it. Yeah.
And as I walked out, and I said, oh, no, I can lift that pretty easily. It was 28 pound, I think, which I'm not sure what that is in about.
Yeah, not great with conversions.
15 kilograms. And he said, oh, yeah, but lifting one's all right, but lifting them all day, it'll be too much. And as I was walking out, one of the guys said to me, even us boys aren't allowed to lift them by ourselves. We have to do them with 2.
Oh, that's funny.
So I thought, I'm not going to get that job just because I'm female.
A lot of resistance.
And I suspect the only reason I got the interview was because with my name they thought I was male in the first place.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Yeah. So anyway, I didn't get that job. And then I saw the job advertised and it was actually with Andrew Bradley, the pathologist who was at the time in Brisbane Street. And they wanted a trainee medical technologist. I thought, well, I don't even know what that is. I better look it up in the dictionary.
I was going to say there was no Google. No Google at that point.
No Google. So that didn't help much. So anyway, I put in an application and I went for the interview. And they said, you realise if you get this job, you have to go back to uni part-time for 6 years and do a Bachelor of Applied Science. And I said, well, no, I didn't realise, but yes, I will.
Wow.
I didn't tell them that I fainted at the sight of blood.
Whoops.
Then they said, and do you have any plans of getting married? And at that time I was single. And I said, well, no, not really. And babies? No, not really. So anyway, they said, okay, thanks very much. We'll let you know in a week or 2 if you've got the job. They rang me at 4:00 on the Friday afternoon to say, you've got the job, can you start Monday?
Wow.
And I said...
You must have impressed them.
I said, oh, well, no, there was someone else who was unreliable that got the sack.
Oh.
So I said, yes, apparently, which I felt a bit bad about, but it was nothing to do with me. And so then the next problem was, in those days, if you're female, you had to wear a dress or a skirt to work. So I had to do a quick trip to town to find something to wear.
Wow. All these things we don't even think about now. Like it's just...
Yeah. And anyway, so I started there and the rest is history. I'm still there.
You're still in the same place.
Well, I'm still working. I'm working in pathology.
Yeah.
However, over the 46 years that I've been there, I've been bought and sold with the company on numerous occasions. So we're now part of Sonic.
Okay, I see.
And we've moved buildings 4 times.
So you're kind of part of the furniture, but it's a moving feast. Like
So I'm pretty well part of the furniture.
wow.
Yeah, we started in 15A Brisbane Street, then we moved to 19 where Parkview was.
Yeah.
And then we went to 159 St John Street.
Yeah.
And then where we are now in Frederick Street.
Gosh, you're like, there's a wealth of knowledge you must have. You would be very valuable to that company, I would think. Do you have a point for retirement? How does that look for you?
Oh, yeah, I've actually started progression to retirement. Mm-hmm. So I worked full time to start with and was also doing a half university load part-time.
Of course you were.
And then when that finished, by the time that finished, we were married.
Yep.
And then a year or two later, we had Stacey.
Yes.
After I had her, she's 39 now. So after we had her, I went back to work 3 days a week.
Okay.
And then over the year, and then Courtney came along on the, sort of 3 years later. And then as after Courtney started school, I progressively ended up working back up to 4 days a week.
Yeah.
And just recently, I started my progression to retirement. So I dropped from 4 days to 3 days a couple of years ago. And now I've just dropped to 2 days a week.
Oh, how does that feel for you?
It's really good because you just have a weekend work day and then you have 5-day weekends. But I find I haven't got any more free time. I just waste more.
I know. So many of my friends have retired because they're a little bit older than me, and they're like, I don't know how I used to fit in work. Like they're just so busy doing all of the things. Like they just fill up their days. It's amazing.
Well, and I think the other difference too is that when I was working and the kids were at home, we also had our own business. So Kerry basically was an owner-operator, transport driver, and I have to do the books. Mm-hmm. And he was working quite long hours. Mm. And we literally literally for sometimes we go a week and almost our only
ships in
contact as far as messages and conversation went was leaving a note to each other on the whiteboard. Oh. And even now, depending on who gets out of bed first, we have to leave a message. We've fed the dog and then put the day so that she doesn't get fed twice. And he's now retired, like we sold the truck a few years ago, and then because of health issues, he's retired. So some of the day, we bought a caravan.
Yes.
So we tend to go away more often.
Go and enjoy it a bit.
And then other days I'll be home and he'll be bored. And being an ex-truckie, one of his forms of entertainment is going for drives.
Drives, yeah. So you could wake up in the morning and not realise it, but be at the other end of the state later in the afternoon because you've gone for a drive.
Oh, we wouldn't be at the other end of the state. We would have been to the other end of the state and come home via a different way.
Come back. You would have circumnavigated some part of it.
Well, the other day we went to Oatlands and we came back via Woods Lake.
Oh.
And then when we get to Ross, we came through Cressy back to Launceston.
Mm. Okay.
Yeah, and so things and the more time you have, the more time you waste.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Well, let's go back to, so I know that you have done that you still, I assume you're still swimming, like
I when I finished uni,
mm-hmm.
While I was at uni, I swam up until I was 20.
Yeah.
But then when it got to the point where I was working full time and doing a half load at uni, mm-hmm. Pretty much any sport went.
Yeah.
My week was basically weekdays were work and go to uni. Friday night mm-hmm. was go to the pub. Saturday night was sleep in and do the housework, and Sunday night was study.
Yeah.
Sunday was study, and that was basically my life for 5 years. And then we had a year of basically going to work, and so then I went to adult ed and I did a sewing course.
Yeah.
I like dressmaking.
Oh wow.
for a couple of terms, just so I could make basic shirts and
Yeah.
things. And that's when I was up at the pool one day and I was talking to Peter Goss, who a lot of people would know because he managed Riverside Pool for a few years.
Okay.
And then he was the manager up at Windmill Hill after that. And he said, "I would try to get a Masters swimming club going in Tassie. Are you interested in joining?" And I said, "Oh, yeah." And he says, "Oh, you are 25, aren't you?" Because in those days you had to be 25 to join. And I said, "Yeah, I'm 25 and 5 months."
Yeah.
And he said, "Oh, good." So anyway, I got the club going and I was on the founding committee and I've been swimming with them ever since.
That's amazing. So how old are you now?
66.
66. That's like, well, it's a lot more than half your life.
And I do enjoy it, but it was through swimming that actually led me to running.
So that's the next bit. So how did you get into running? Sorry, I'm just trying to get my camera to come up.
Well, a lot of the master swimmers that were coming in were triathletes. And they always would get all excited about going and doing the Burnie 10.
Yeah.
So I got it in my head I wanted to do the Burnie 10. But at the time I was a little bit tubby.
Right.
I wasn't a beast, but I definitely had more weight on me than I needed.
Yeah.
And I couldn't run to save myself because I'd just get puffed out.
How long ago was this?
It was when I was 50. Oh, just before I was 50, because I thought about it for a couple of years before I actually did it.
Interesting. That's really interesting. Yeah.
And then Ray Bryan, who also swims with Masters, and Lizzie Ellis, who you would
I know well. Knew well. Yeah.
Well, I knew Lizzie because she did swim with Masters for a while as well, and also her daughter was friends with my daughter at school.
She's actually my son's godmother. Was my son.
Oh, okay. Yeah, she's a lovely person. Yeah. And anyway, Lizzie and Ray were running an adult ed course called Learn to Run the Burnie 10. And the first year I saw it, and I thought, I don't reckon I'd be good enough to even start. And I joined the gym at Lagana.
Yep.
And so over the next 12 months, I'd run a bit on the treadmill because if I tried running outside, I just got too puffed out. And on the treadmill, I got to the point I could run 3Ks.
Awesome.
So I thought, I think I can go to learn to run the Burnie 10 this year. So I signed up for it. And the first one was the day before my 50th birthday.
Oh, wow.
Or the day after my 50th birthday.
Yeah.
And we went and we had to meet at Heritage Forest.
Yes.
And just as a bit of an experiment to see where we were at, we had to run from the playground to the little white bridge.
Yep.
And I managed to make it just. And then I was huffing and puffing and, couldn't have gone any further at all, as were most of the rest of the class. And then, so we just then walked some laps and started like that. And then Lizzie gave us homework and we had to, do some walks. And then we built up over the course. Did the Burnie 10. I ran the first 3K and then walked the rest. And at the end of that, Lizzie said to me, "Well, you shouldn't throw it all away now. Longford Fun runs next week, in 2 weeks' time. Sign up."
Yes.
Which I did. And after that, a couple of us that were in the class said, "What to now?" And she gave us Gary Armstrong's phone number. So I fronted up down at Park Street on whatever night it was and started running with Gary's group for a bit.
It was my first coach.
Yeah, once again, all the others were miles ahead of me and I was huffing and puffing, but we got there. And then in the summer, he said, "Come and join Masters and go out and do track." Because by this time, also, I'd got a bit sick of following the black line at the bottom of the swimming pool and needed something a bit different for a while. I did still keep swimming.
Yeah.
And so I went out to St Leonard's and I was in masters for a couple of years and did the track work, but after a while I found all I've done is substituted a black line for a white line on a red background, and they must have mown the lawn before I got there every day, and it just set my hay fever off.
It just wasn't working.
It just didn't work for me. So I didn't worry about that. But through there, I met a few other people who we still run together on Sundays, and they also were running with Gary's group. And then we got it in our heads we were going to go and do a half marathon.
Of course.
So we'd done a couple of 10Ks by this. So anyway, we thought, well, we'll go to the Gold Coast. That's a good place for a holiday. And while we're there, just for fun, we'll do the half marathon. So we trained all winter, and I thought, Gold Coast Marathon, even in July, I'm going to suffer from the heat.
Yeah.
So I was running all winter with, extra layers on.
Yeah.
And we got there, we did the half marathon. Thought that had a bit of a holiday, went shopping and everything. Thought that wasn't bad. And so then we came home and thought, what do we do next? So we went and did the City to Surf.
Of course you did.
And that was fantastic. And then the next year we thought, where will we go now? So we went and did Noosa.
Wow. And the half? You did the half at Noosa?
The half.
Yeah. And
then after a while we thought, let's try and run a half marathon in every state.
Oh, wow.
And it did take a few years. We didn't do it all in one go. So I think in the end there was possibly only 2 of us that finished it. And we ended so Christine and I, we ended up running a half marathon in every state, and the only ones that we didn't run the same event was Canberra.
That's awesome.
And
that's so cool.
Adelaide, we counted it as a half marathon.
Yeah.
But we actually did the full marathon.
Oh.
Because the full marathon was 2 laps, we figured, well, we've done the half marathon in South Australia.
You totally have. That's amazing. So it sounds to me like you started running for a little bit of a change as well. Like you met somebody who suggested that would be a good plan. And then one of the reasons you kept running, at least at that point, if that may still be the same, is that you met people who you got on with and you had similar goals, and setting those goals together as a group has been really helpful for you as like something to aim for your training and things. Do you think that's
that's probably it? It's sort of like I had a goal in the first place to run the Burnie 10, and then in achieving that, I met people along the way that encouraged me to stick at running.
Yeah.
And I found I liked it.
So what is it you like about running, do you think?
Well, one of the things I like about running compared with swimming is if you want to go for a run, you don't have to drive to the pool, take all your clothes off, put your bathers on, and then when you finish, get showered and everything. For running, if you decide you want to go for a run, you can just put your shoes on and go out the door.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter where you go. And if you don't want to, and you can run with friends, you can run by yourself. It doesn't matter what time of the day or night it is. You don't have to worry about, is there going to be space for me?
Yeah.
If you don't want to run around your own neighbourhood, you can drive a bit further and go somewhere else and run.
Explore.
Pardon?
You can explore.
You can explore, and I must say I haven't done very much running in the last 6 or 7 months. There's been a few things that my headspace wasn't quite in the right place. Just other things going on, and with just change in routine, dropping from 3 days, couple of trips to Melbourne when Dad passed away, which he was 93, so it was sort of, it was time. But
it's still hard.
If we get there, are we going to be able to get home with COVID and all that sort of stuff? We were lucky that we did have that window. And you can run anywhere. You just put your running shoes in your bag and you can go anywhere. And there's lots of little challenges you can set yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't want to run, if you think, oh, I don't want to run, and you put your shoes on and you think, I'll just walk today. And after a while, you might think, oh, I'm bored of walking, and you'll just start running anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or other days you might think you feel like going for a run, and after a 200 meters, you think, oh, stuff this. I couldn't be bothered doing this today. So then you can just walk and look at the scenery and look in sticky beak in people's gardens of the flowers they got,
Yeah,
and the birds and everything.
so just being in the space that you're in at that moment and making the most of it, looking around you and enjoying it.
Yeah, and then once I'd been running for a while also, people started talking about the triple top.
Oh.
And I thought, I asked a few people, oh, is it really as hard as people say?
Mm-hmm.
And a few people said, no, not really. A couple of others said, oh, you'll break your neck. And there's rope ladders and 6 foot drop, 10-foot drops, and you'll break your neck. And I thought, oh, I'll go and see. So anyway, signed up for the triple top. Got the hottest day in November for I don't know how long. It was 30 plus when we started almost. I entered as a walker. Anyway, I got to the end of it, but was pretty well dehydrated for the next 24 hours.
Because it was so warm.
Because it was so hot, and I ran out of water 6K before the end.
Oh.
And at one drink station, at the second last drink stop, I asked for water and they said, oh, we haven't got very much. We need to save it for the ones behind you. And I think there was only 2 people behind me.
Oh.
I didn't know that at the time. And I got the next drink station's got plenty. And when I got to the next drink station, they had none.
No.
So I had to come all the way down the scree.
Yeah.
In 30 plus with no water.
No, that wouldn't be fun.
But yeah, I was just determined to get to the end.
Have you done it again?
Yeah, I ended up doing it 3 or 4 times.
Okay, yeah.
And then the next year I did it in drizzle.
Yep, that's the normal way.
The third year was mud.
Yeah.
And I hadn't got very far, and I put my foot down and pulled my foot up, and my shoe went in the mud up to my thigh. Put my foot up, no shoes. Dug it out and continued on. And that year, anybody behind me, and there wasn't many, had pulled out.
Wow.
The yes man was following me out. And when we got back onto the road, he says, I've got my car here. I'll give you a drive down to the finish line if you like. And I said, no.
This is a race.
And he said, oh, nobody will know. And I said, oh, no. And he said, I'll drop you at the corner before anyone could see you. I said, no, oh, no, I'll keep walking, thanks. So I did.
Oh,
but
maybe he wanted to get there quicker.
Maybe.
Yeah. What did you say? Sorry, I interrupted.
Yeah, so anyway, so I did finish the 3 or 4 that I did, and then after the 4th one, I thought, no, I think I've achieved my goals there, and I think it's getting to the point where it's a little bit physically beyond me, so I've put that one to bed. Yeah,
that's a lovely race there. I love the views from up there, and
like you
said, it's quite a challenge, and I think the sense of achievement when you finish it, because it is quite a challenge, because you've got all kinds of terrain and it's quite steep, and you've got the boulders and the climbing down bits as well as the bits of running that you get to do.
Yeah, I didn't do a lot of running. I did a little bit of running across the top plateau. That was about it. Yeah. And the road to the finish.
Yeah.
But sort of from that, it was when the trail running was starting to take off.
Okay. Yeah.
And I found that I actually enjoy trail running more, even though I've got very clumsy and a very poor sense of direction, and I have got myself lost a few times.
Yeah.
And the first time I did 4 beaches.
Yep.
When I went round the headland after you've left Greens Beach, that first headland.
Yep.
Somehow I ended up pointed back to Greens Beach and didn't realise.
Interesting.
And if I'd stopped and used my common sense instead of trying to just keep running, I would have realised that the water was on the wrong side.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't until I got to
like
the
Hebe
house
Reef or
that
something.
had the big double gates.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I thought, I've already been through there. I'm going the wrong way.
I think that's nudist beach, they call that.
I think it might have been nude beach.
Yeah.
But anyway, then I turned around and I found the right way. And that race was my only DNF.
Oh,
Because
wow.
I managed to get to Badger's Head.
Yeah.
To the checkpoint there. But by then I'd probably ran an extra 2 or 3K.
Yeah.
And then there was a tree falling over the path that went from Badger's Head through to the next beach.
Mm-hmm. Copper Cove.
And I wasn't tall enough to step over the log, and I was too big to go under it. So I had to go off the path. Yeah. And then I couldn't find the path again.
Oh, no.
And anyway, I just sat down and thought, rude words in my head. And then I just shouted them out really, really loud because nobody else was there. And then I started crying. And then the March flies started biting.
Oh, Alwyn.
And then I thought, F this. And I scrubbed bash down to the beach and then went back to the Badger's Head and withdrew, because that was when the 25K went all the way to Baker's Beach.
Yeah, yeah, and you could get picked
the
up
one
there
where you turn around at Badger's these days.
Yeah,
yeah. So but that was actually a very good lesson, because once I got back to Badger's Head, Kerry was waiting at Baker's Beach to pick me up, so I had to ring him to come and get me. And while we were there, all the lead runners, that by the time I get back, normally they're all recovered and looking fit and well, and you think everything was really easy for them. And they were coming back and they were huffing and panting and red in the face, and a couple of them had stomach cramps and were rolling around the ground, and some of them, their water bladders had burst and they had no water left. And
so you realise it's not all rosy at the front either. Like everybody's having
made you realise, that these people that you think are expert runners and are infallible, they're still human like us.
Exactly.
They just can run faster.
Yeah, that's right. It just still hurts them though, and they still have stuff going on. Yeah,
and that particular race, it was probably only the second or third one they'd ever run. And the course wasn't well marked like it is today. And at that checkpoint, the runners that came back while we were there came from 4 different directions.
No.
And some of them had run extra, and some of them had accidentally taken shortcuts. And so it was a real eye-opener that things that I take as, it's just, mug's game when you don't know what you're doing and maybe you shouldn't be there. It happens to the experts as well.
Yes, yeah.
And it was a really good sort of, eye-opener in that, and a confidence booster.
Yeah. We're all in this together and we're all having an experience, and most of us, it's a challenge at some point for all of us. Doing the same thing. Yeah, that's really cool. So you said you're not running much at the moment. How often would you say you would run right now?
Well, in the last 3 weeks, on our Sundays we've started running again, but probably from when daylight saving finished up until the 3 weeks ago, I was virtually not running at all.
Yeah, but you were swimming, I'm assuming.
I was swimming more. I was probably swimming 3 or 4 times a week.
Okay, yeah.
And I go to the gym, do a class at the gym once a week as well. And I was doing that. And the Sunday group, we were still meeting. And we were still doing our loop that, depending on how we feel, can be anywhere between 11 and 14 Ks.
Yeah.
Instead of running it, we were walking it.
Okay. So you're all having a bit of a break from the actual running component.
Yeah, it just got to the point where, for me anyway, running was a bit of chore, and none of us had injuries, but we just had little niggles.
Yeah.
And it was freezing cold and we didn't want to take our jumpers off, and we couldn't run with our jumpers on because we were going to get hot or was threatening rain and we didn't want to get wet, so we walked so we could wear our raincoats. And just depending on who turned up on the group and what mood people were in, we just sort of adjusted the distance we went and whether we walked or ran. And so now we've just started back running again after a bit of a break to clear the head.
When talking to you, it seems like since you started swimming, there really hasn't been many times in your life when you haven't done some kind of exercise. Like you've gone out of your way to exercise. Why do you think that is? Because there's plenty of people in this world who, for whatever reason, don't exercise once they leave school. They just don't. And so why do you think you kept at exercise? What does it give you that makes you want to keep exercise, whether it's swimming or running, do you think?
I was probably pretty lucky in that I was born into a family that, although organised sport wasn't a part of our lives, our lifestyle was one that did involve exercise. Even if it was just being in the backyard, climbing up a tree, or climbing up the poles on the veranda and swinging on the swing or monkey bars at home. And growing up in the 60s, if you're going to the shop for your mum, you get sent up the shop to buy a loaf of bread or something, and the kids would just be given, in those days it was probably a shilling to buy the loaf of bread, and you just walk. And then, or in my case, I'd run up to the shop, and then 9 times out of 10 it was to get a half a loaf of bread, in the old-fashioned, wrapped up in the tissue paper. I'd always ask the shop man to give me one that had the hump sticking up. Because then I could walk home and eat the bread on the way home, and then I would just tell Mum that, I got the one that was going in.
And she
because it was really fresh, yummy white bread. And Dad being a yachty, and growing up in Perth, you just were always at the beach. And then the only time really that I wasn't exercising was when I was at uni and studying at the same time. And then I just happened to be in the right place at the right time to then get involved in masters swimming. And so from then on in, exercise has always just been a habit.
It's what you do. So I think maybe it's that habit forming that you did back in, halfway through your 20s that has stood you in good stead, for the rest of your adult life.
I think that's what it is. And the other thing too is I've been lucky with the genetics I've been dealt with. So I've had very few injuries. When I first started running, I got plantar fasciitis in both feet. Ouch. I didn't go. They said to rest for 2 weeks. I said I'll rest for 2 weeks after the Burnie 10. It didn't go away, and I found it didn't matter whether I ran or rested. It didn't get any better or any worse. But at its worst, it was so bad that I even had to put my orthotics in my Ugg boots.
Oh no!
And it's just basically chronic, and I live with it, and I know how to manage it now, and it very rarely flares up. And I think also the fact that I swim as well as run, and do one session at the gym, which is normally kettlebells or Pilates, so it's a little bit of strength training, also helps with the injuries.
Keeps you all together.
I did do 3 marathons, and when I was training for them, my biggest weeks I think were about 65 k's running. But I only ran 4 times a week. And I got to the start line feeling like, after a really good taper, I got to the start line with no injuries, feeling really good. Whereas some of the others that ran 5 or 6 times a week with no cross training were carrying hip, niggly hips or niggly calves before they even started. And although they finished, it didn't finish overly well for them, whereas I did better than I was expecting.
Yeah, I think there's a good lesson there, that cross training, but definitely the strength training, and to help make you stronger, really helps for longer distances.
And not only, it's not just for longer distances and for running, but as you get older, especially with females, you lose muscle and bone density.
Mm-hmm.
So you really need to do a weight bearing exercise. And although swimming is very good for muscle tone and core strength, it lacks the weight bearing
element.
So it does help, to do something else as well, whether it be walking or running.
Yeah.
Or going to the gym for a bit of strength training.
One question I ask most people, Alwyn, is how long do you think you'll run for in your life?
Well, at the moment, I did think about that after I heard you ask Colin.
Yeah.
And I don't really have an end point.
Yeah.
I realise that I am getting along the tape measure quite a long way, or more than halfway along the tape measure of life.
Mm-hmm.
And I possibly won't be able to run forever.
Mm-hmm.
But for as long as I can keep running, I'll just keep running. And when I can't run, I'll walk.
Good on you. So you'll just keep moving. Like I guess what I'm hearing from is that to you, a high value for you is moving, continuing to move as much as you can.
Well, one of the things that I found when I've been doing more walking, and since we got the caravan, and Kerry and I have been like going away exploring places we'd never had the opportunity to go when we were both working pretty well full time, is that he fishes.
Mm-hmm.
We're not used to being in each other's face 24/7.
Uh-huh.
So I'll just say to him, I'm going for a walk. I'll walk out for an hour. I'll walk back for an hour. I'll see you in 2 hours.
Yeah.
Because I must say I'm not overly good necessarily at safety and walking by myself. So, but one of the reasons that I walk rather than run when I'm by myself is because there's a bit less risk of tripping over my feet and hurting myself.
Yeah.
Because we might be places like the last one we went to Baker's Beach.
Mm-hmm.
So he sat on the beach fishing, and I walked over to Copper Cove and back.
Wonderful.
And other time when he's been on Baker's Beach, I've just said, I'll just go for a walk. I'll walk an hour out and an hour back along the beach. And so I left from round Baker's Point where the campground is.
Yeah.
And I got up to the path to Copper Cove.
Yeah.
But that day, that was, I think, about 7K to there.
It is, yeah.
And I walked in thongs.
Oh.
And I started up, I had to take them off because the sand started rubbing. And I went to start up the path to Copper Cove, and I thought, January, snakes. Sharp sticks, wriggly sticks. Yeah. Thongs is probably not a good idea.
Yeah.
And so I just turned around and came back to the beach. And we went down to there's been other places. Some of the easier walks, he's come with me. So when we were down south, he did the Duck Hole walk, and Ralph Falls, Halls Falls, and some of those easier ones. But then when we went to Evercreech, he did the little loop while I did the bigger loop up to the falls. And I couldn't actually I contemplated doing the loop that day, but it involved crossing the river on rocks, holding a rope.
Yeah.
And I was by myself, and it was only about 8 degrees and the water looked freezing, and I thought, no, it's probably not a good idea. So I turned around and came back again. But
good decision.
Yeah, but I found with walking, you see so much more than when you're running.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that is true, especially if you're in an environment where you need to be careful where you're putting your feet. So you're spending a lot of time probably looking down. Like if you're running, you spend a lot of time looking down at the path, don't you? Making sure you're not tripping over and things like that. Yeah.
Well, you do, but even one time I was walking up the gorge and Kerry was with me.
Yeah.
Normally I would run that path.
Yeah.
But because he was with me, we were walking, and there was a couple of little things along that path. Like there was this little monument thing.
Okay.
I'd never noticed it before.
Because you always run past it.
Because I'd always run past it.
That's interesting.
And you spot more of the wildlife when you're walking.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you notice the flowers on the bushes, and you look at the view, especially when you're on the trail. And I do actually prefer trail to the road, because it is a lot more mentally challenging as well.
Mm-hmm.
You have to concentrate where you're going, otherwise you can easily get lost. Like not if you're sensible, not enough to stop doing it.
Yeah.
But you do have to watch where you put your feet a little bit, so you don't trip over.
That being present in the moment and where you are, and being aware.
Have to be aware of where you are, so that if you want to go back, you can turn around and go back. I have had a few experiences being very lost, but the worst one was actually on the road.
Oh.
I was in Melbourne, and I'd gone over to support my daughter because she'd had a health thing that was a little bit distressing to her. Yeah. And I said, I'll just go for a 5K run. And she lived in Point Cook. I don't know if you know Melbourne or not, but
I know Melbourne, but I don't know if I know Point Cook. But there you go.
It's one of the suburbs on the way out towards Werribee.
Okay. Yeah.
And so we got the map out, and she said, oh yeah, we'll go this way. And I said, yeah, okay then. And I didn't have my Garmin. I only had a normal watch with hands on it.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, I'll be about 35 minutes. Anyway, me being me, thought, oh, the beach might be over there. So I kept focused on where I might get to the beach.
Yeah.
And then I saw a supermarket, and I thought, oh, I need to go down a couple more streets. Anyway, long story short, by the time I got to somewhere, I saw a sign that said Werribee Zoo.
Oh.
It was a Sunday. It's Sunday. Everything was closed. I could see the highway that went to Werribee and Geelong.
Yeah. Yep, I know that.
I thought, I don't think I'm in Point Cook anymore.
Oh dear.
I didn't have my phone with me. I didn't have my water with me because I was only going 5K.
Yes.
Fortunately, when I saw the sign where I was at the T-junction, a man pulled up at the paddle beating shop.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, excuse me, can you tell me where I am? And he looked at me as if I was a bit of a zombie.
This is planet Earth.
Yeah. And I explained what had happened. And I said, do you mind if I use your phone to ring my daughter and let her know I'm safe? And he said, oh, no. So I went and rang, and there was no answer. And because she was out looking for me.
No.
And anyway, he gave me directions back. And by then it was like 35 degrees.
Oh. And
I got thirsty, so I had to call into the display home and ask the lady, could I please have a glass of water? Oh. Or could I get a drink of water? I actually went in and said, have you got a tap on your front lawn I can get a drink out of, please? And she brought me a glass of water and offered to run me home. And I said, oh, no, that's fine, thanks. Anyway, I got home under my own steam. But when we looked at the map afterwards, I'd probably done about 20K.
No.
And and it all turned out, but ever since then I have been a little bit more conscious of where I've been going,
just in case.
And when I've stayed with her, they've always shown me where the nearest park is and which way to go, so I don't end up lost. And have you got your phone with you, Mum?
Can we track it to make sure that we can find you if we need
to? Yeah. So
that's
anyway,
funny.
That was a bit of an eye opener. How quickly things can go awry if you get distracted.
Yes. So talking about distractions, when you're out for a run, what kind of things do you think about? You don't have to give us like the details. What sort of stuff is going through your mind when you're running?
It depends. Often I used to run, and I am going to get back into it. If I finished work at 3, I would take my running gear to work and run straight from work, because I knew if I came and sat down, that would be the end of it. I wouldn't move.
Yeah.
And because of where we work, it was always up the gorge.
Yeah.
And depending on what sort of day I had would depend on what I thought of. So if I'd had a really bad day, I would be just thinking, I'm so glad I'm out of there.
Yeah.
I've had enough. I'm lucky I didn't smash something.
Oh.
And I will just run flat out and just think how glad I am to be free.
Yeah.
And then by the time I got to the Pennyroyal, my head would be starting to clear. Yeah. And I'd have to slow down because I'd run so fast I'd be puffed out. And then I'd just sort of calm down and start looking at what was around me, and maybe thinking, I might think what I had for tea, what I have to do for tea, or if I was training for an event, I would start thinking, maybe we might have this hill, so I would need to concentrate on my running a bit. Yeah. And remember, because I run with Old Train, and remember, Amy said, if you're going uphill, little steps. Yeah. And I'd concentrate on that, and I'd concentrate on my breathing a bit. Other days I wouldn't think much at all. I'd just look around at how nice everything looked, or sometimes I would chat to people, like tourists that had got lost. Or if there was ladies about to go over the zigzag track in their high heels, I would convince them it's probably better to go on the path on the other side. Yeah, totally understand that. That was the first sign they'd see if they were coming from town, so they didn't realise there was another side half the time. Yeah, that's true. And sometimes when I got to the playground, I'll go down the slide.
You're just a big kid, aren't you, Alwyn?
Yeah, probably. And
which is awesome.
Yeah, and then when I'm running events, I never set myself, well, I sort of set myself a PB time that I want to do. Yeah. But I usually will set myself a time range. Okay. Yeah. So I'll set, my goal will be the time that I think in my head is achievable. And then I will set a time that if I go that slow, it's unacceptable. Okay. And then I will set a time that if I do that time, I'll be absolutely over the moon and stoked.
So it sounds very scientific to me.
Well, it probably is.
You know, where you've got the lower, the middle one, and the higher one.
Yeah. Well, it's probably almost going to like the reference ranges that I work with at work all the time.
That's what I was thinking.
And so if I do the time that I was expecting, I'm happy. And then if I do better than that, even if I don't reach my absolutely stoked time, I'm still happy. Yeah, yeah. Whereas if I was to set I have to do a time that might be, unachievable, and then I don't do it, I would be disappointed. Yeah, so
there's more opportunity for you to be happy this way.
So there's 99% success rate instead of a 50% or less.
Yeah. That's really cute. I like that. That's clever.
And then when I'm running those events, I'll look around and I'll concentrate a little bit on where I'm running. And then when I start getting bored, I'll start doing sums in my head.
Sums. I've heard of that.
Have you?
Well, yeah, but mostly because people find it difficult, and so it distracts them a lot from the fact that they're running, because they find it hard to do sums. Do you find it easy or hard?
Yeah, well, I think that's probably why I do it. So I start thinking, I'll look at my watch and I think, right, I'm running, say 7-minute Ks. Yeah. So if I run 7-minute Ks and I've got X Ks to go, I reckon I'm going to be finished in a certain time. Yeah. And if I want to get home in, say, 3 hours 30, then I'll work it out. I have to keep running, say, no worse than an 11-minute K, or I'm not going to get to that time. Yeah, yeah. And like, it doesn't worry me whether I actually achieve that time or not.
It's
but it's just a way of distraction.
Yeah. It's hard too, though, because when you're doing time and the pace, and so you're working with 10s and the units of to 12 with the time, I find that very challenging sometimes, especially if I've been running for a little while, to try and work out some of that stuff.
Sometimes it is, but I do tend to round it to I don't work it out exactly, so I might round it to the nearest 15 seconds.
Yeah.
Because 15 seconds is easy because that's a quarter.
True. It's true. It's such a tricky thing.
Yeah.
So obviously do you do many runs by yourself? So you were just talking about running after work and getting back to that. That's obviously a by yourself one, and you run on Sundays with friends, and trains probably with people as well. So do you do much by yourself, or are you just a bit of a combination of with people and by yourself?
Oh no, I do a combination. Like I say, this winter I've been a little bit slack with the running. Also, my shift's changed a bit, so Tuesday night I've mostly been on a 3 till 11. Which means that running buddies doesn't work.
Yeah.
And but I was running with running buddies. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
And I do intend to get back into that habit.
Yeah.
But just sometimes work gets in the way.
Yeah.
And Thursdays in summertime I'll go back up Trevellyn with Old Train.
Yeah.
And then Sunday I run with the original group. There's probably only 4 of us in that group now.
Yeah.
But we've basically, we want to keep going, even if all of us can only walk. Yeah. We just want to keep going just for a good catch up. And that run, normally, if people have got gripes about anything, we just let it all out of our systems. Yeah, we might not necessarily want an answer, but you can use each other as a sounding board.
Yeah.
Other days we'll be running and we'll be solving all the problems of the world and what the government should do about this and what the government should do about that.
Yes.
We don't always agree on things.
Yeah.
But that's what life is, and we generally tend just to agree to disagree.
Yeah. Yeah.
Other times we might have exciting things in our lives that have happened that we'll talk about, or holidays or whatever. Mm-hmm. I do have a reputation among runners as being able to talk very, very well.
No. I hadn't noticed that.
And I am learning when some people don't necessarily want to be bombarded, and
really? No.
A way of me getting rid of stuff out of my system rather than necessarily even needing them to reply.
Yeah.
And then other times, like obviously when we're away, a lot of what I do is by myself. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And when I can do it safely, I tend to go beach or trail. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I'll just go around the neighbourhood. That's usually by myself as well.
Okay.
Sometimes the trail walks, I might go with non-running friends.
Yeah.
So we did Cape Rail.
Yeah.
A couple of my swimming buddies did Cape Rail. Another one of my swimming buddies was going to do South Cape.
Oh,
Not the whole one, but just the bit from the whale statue down to the beach. But the day we got there, it was 3 degrees, sleet, 40k winds.
That doesn't sound pleasant.
We looked at each other and said, we don't want to be the front page of the Mercury. Neither of us had waterproof pants. We were definitely ill-equipped for those conditions, and it would have been miserable. We don't want to be front page of the Mercury. We'll go another day. So we went on the McMahon Magical Mystery Tour instead. I went up to Geeveston for morning tea, and then we ended up having our picnic up in the shelter shed up at Hearts, the beginning of all the Hearts Mountain trails.
Sounds lovely.
And it was still snowing up there.
Wow, that sounds awesome.
That was a couple of years ago. Yeah. So it was still a good day.
Yeah.
And so, it just depends. Sometimes by myself, sometimes with a group.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. How do you think running has improved your life?
Well, to start with, it was something that I wanted to do, and I found the first thing was not that I ever had a real problem with body image, but I did drop 5 or 10 kilograms, which then took me down to my ideal weight.
Yeah.
So it did make me feel better than about myself a bit. I didn't feel
so it's good
frumpy and
self-esteem.
old. One of the best things is I've met so many supportive people.
Oh.
And so many people that I would never have met had it not been for running.
Yeah.
And from running, it's then led me to do other things for recreation, like just going out for walks in the bush and on the trail. And I found it was really, really good cross training for swimming, especially endurance swimming. And just for everyday life, being fitter, you don't find things quite as much as a struggle.
Yeah.
And just, I don't know, and mentally, it gives you an outlet. If you're crabby with everybody, or if you've had a bad day, you can just put your shoes on and out the door, and by the time you come back, it's just blown all the bad thoughts out of your head.
Yeah.
Or even if they don't go away completely, it has simmered them down so that you can then control them.
Yeah, and that's the endorphins and the chemicals that are going off in there.
Yeah, or if you've
improve your mood.
Or if you've got something that you've been mulling over and you don't really know what to do, especially if you're running with somebody else, even if they don't give you an answer, just the fact that you've verbally told somebody about things, you can come home and you can make a decision.
Yeah, it's like running therapy, I think, sometimes.
It is exactly like therapy.
It is, yeah. I love that. So, Alwyn, if somebody came to you and said, I really want to start running, what tips would you give them to get them started? But even more importantly, I think, to keep them running, because often getting started is one thing, but that being consistent and adopting it as your new habit, as we established earlier, you started exercising earlier on in life, and it's like a habit for you that you can't imagine not doing it. It's who you are. So what kind of tips would you have for people wanting to start?
Yeah, well, I do remember still, when I say starting running, I mean starting running as an adult, because as a kid I just naturally ran, just because all kids run. The first thing I would say was, don't think about it, just go and do it. And then if they said, oh, I'm too old, I'd say, well, I was 50, just do it.
Exactly.
Because a lot of them say I'm too old when they're 35.
Yes.
And that's the other thing I didn't mention, because a lot of the people in Ultrain especially, and even the other running circles I'm with, a lot of them are a lot younger than me.
Yeah. And
it makes me feel younger than I am.
I love that.
Because I still, instead of having an old person's brain, I keep in touch with a younger person's activities.
Yeah.
Even if I can't keep up physically.
Yeah.
And all of them, especially the buddies and the old trainers, are really, really good at accommodating me. And, at Old Train, if they're doing laps of the park, if I know I can't keep up, I'll just do the little laps while they do the big laps.
Yeah. Yeah. That's perfect.
Or if they're doing 5 reps, I'll do 2 reps.
Yeah.
And I'll just adjust the program, and they're all accommodating and all really friendly, and the same with the buddies as well.
Yeah.
And so I would tell people, just do it.
Yeah.
I would then say, if you haven't done it before, don't go and set yourself the goal of running a marathon. Be realistic. Work up. These people that are running marathons, even if they've been fit, they haven't done it overnight.
That's right.
It does take a little bit of commitment.
It does.
So build up gradually. If you can't run, first of all, just walk until you can walk a K. Then when you can walk a K, then run for a minute walk for 5, run for a minute, walk for 5, etc., until you slowly build up. And at the same time, build up the distance.
Yeah.
And then once you feel confident that, you can do 2 or 3K, then go and find yourself a group.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the groups are so supportive that they'll look after newbies.
Yeah.
And there'll be somebody at your level that you can tag team with.
Yeah.
And you can talk about things running related, etc., and build a whole new network.
Big community.
And hopefully that will keep you motivated and you'll keep going.
Yeah. So many people have actually said, I started running for a reason, a physical reason often, but I kept running because of the people, the friends I made.
Yeah, I think that's very true. And the difference between swimming is running, you can talk to people while you're doing it.
It's really
Swimming,
hard, isn't it?
You can't. And that's why on, my weekends is Saturday morning, first thing is master swimming training.
Yeah.
And then I don't get to park run very often because we have breakfast after swimming on Saturday.
Because that's when you're going to catch up.
Between breakfast or park run, and normally breakfast wins. And then by the time I've eaten breakfast, I'm too full to run.
Well, that sounds like a good compromise to me. You can't talk to your swimming friends anyway while you're swimming, so you have to wait till breakfast to do that.
So. Right. And so Saturday mornings is the swimming catch-up time.
Yeah, I love that. That's really cool. All right, Alwyn. It has been amazing to hear more about you, and your stories are awesome and inspiring. I'm so glad that I chatted to you, and thank you for sharing some of it with us. I will say goodbye to you off the call as well, but I just wanted to say a massive thank you for sharing a little bit of yourself with us. I really appreciate it.
Okay, that's fine. It was a pleasure to talk to you. And I hope it helps other people get involved in the pathway, because there is so many benefits as well as the physical.
Yeah, I'm sure that it will.
I'll say goodbye.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Fit Mind, Fit Body podcast. I'd love to talk to you about your running journey. So send me a message on Facebook or on the website, and let's do it. For a bunch of resources on mindful running that will help you get and stay mentally and physically fit, head over to the website fitmindfitbody.co, and I'll see you there. Plus, I'll be back here in your podcast player a few times a week. Hit subscribe now so that you don't miss an episode. And before you go, I'd really appreciate it if you'd leave a review. It'll help more people to find the podcast and get inspired to start running. I'll see you soon. Bye.